That's right, that quote was from 2006. No known Anglo-Saxon settlements in the whole of the Northwest. And that remained the view until 2014. I mean, it just couldn't be right, could it? The all-conquering English style of building that dominated for half a millennium, non-existent in the whole of the northwestern part of what we now call England. In this video, I'm going to tell the tale of the very best of local, small-scale archaeology. Local archaeology for local antiquarians. Of course, there are lots of place names showing, at the very least, cultural adoption of English, but actual datable settlement buildings. That is, or was, the Black Hole. In this video, I'm going to undertake a pioneering expedition of my own out into wild country on an absolutely bitterly cold day. It is freezing. To see if I can find one of these discovered Anglo-Saxon period settlements discovered by pioneering local archaeologists. It's not going to be easy, but we can do this. Well, when I say we, I mean I can do this. And you can watch from the comfort of your own devices. Oh, look, Charlie was here long before he was crowned. I wonder if he knew anything about Anglo-Saxon settlements in the Yorkshire Dales. He was probably more interested in their plants, though. You know what he's like. Slightly Romanesque. Well, look at this, folks. All of you Thatcherites out there were like that. £2.50 to get access to the countryside. And for all of you non-Thatcherites out there for whom that has just caused palpitations, I'll try and find some way to show you a route that you can avoid paying. A few shout-outs then to coin the YouTube vernacular. The work that was done up here to discover the first scientifically proven, datable Anglo-Saxon period farmsteads in the northwest of England, primarily three small local groups: the Upper Wharfdale Heritage Group, the Ingleborough Archaeology Group, and Stories in Stone. And there's an excellent lecture on YouTube by Dr. David Johnston, and this video is inspired by that. I'll put that as a link in the description down below. And our job, as ever, is to put this on camera for the very first time, I believe, an Anglo-Saxon period farmstead on the side of Ingleborough Mountain on YouTube. And for that, I'd like to thank one of our viewers, Paul Wood, who has been campaigning for that to happen. But before I get too carried away with all the thank yous, I've got to find the thing first. Well, sitting here yapping all day won't buy the baby a new bonnet. Now, as we make our way up here, I think it's worth just taking in the geography of where we are. Effectively, we're heading up the side of Ingleborough via a sort of a dale, and our farmstead is at the 300-metre contour. Sorry about the new money there. Ah, a grotto. I can never resist a grotto. What is it about grottos? Am I meant to take my hat off in here? I'm not sure whether that rule applies to grottos. It's a good place to stop because I wanted to have a word with you, obviously via the comments. When you read that opening statement, there are no known Anglo-Saxon period settlements in the northwest of England. What were your thoughts, if indeed you had any? Did that surprise you, the idea that we have no recorded settlements between the end of Roman Britain and the arrival of the Normans? Perhaps you just never thought about it because it's up north. Anyhow, in a sudden jarring jump to GoPro audio and visual, it's raining, and my bag, of course, has appeared. I was trying to keep it out of sight, but I give up now. We've got a long way to go to find this settlement. Anyhow, as a result of the work that was carried out on multiple sites up here,
We're going to see one today, but a number of different sites that I will tell you about were investigated and scientifically proven to date from the Anglo-Saxon period. So as a result of that work, Professor John Blair, who was still publishing maps in 2013, I think, that showed absolutely no Anglo-Saxon settlements in the northwest, has now added a group to his maps. I think since 2018, he refers to the Ingleborough group. It's quite interesting as we walk along here. Now we're out of the woods, which are probably a creation of the last couple of 100 years. There are some straggly sort of remnants along here of trees. Now, the archaeological work that was carried out showed that the landscape hereabouts, which I think you're going to see when we get further up towards the settlement, is pretty barren and open now, was sort of like woodland pasture. So there were more trees about in the days when our Anglo-Saxon period, I'm not saying they're Anglo-Saxon people, our Anglo-Saxon period people were farming up here. For those of you who may be trying to follow my route, I've just gone past the entrance to Ingleborough Cave, Ingleborough Show Cave, on the side of Ingleborough Mountain. I noticed on the sign that it claims to be something like the finest in Britain. And yet I think White Scar Cave on the other side of the mountains has a similar sort of boast. It's a very competitive world, isn't it? The world of show caves. Right, for those of you who might be trying to follow the route, and I hope some of you do, I love the idea of my videos inspiring people to go out and search for antiquities. The Dale sort of turns around here. We are going to pop up there because there's something I must show you, bit off tangent, but our route ahead is there. Effectively, we've got to stick with the main course of this Dale as it heads up that way. But we're going to go and have a look up here because there's something you've got to see. Absolutely nothing to do with Anglo-Saxon period, but look at this. This is Trow Gill. Now, I love to see things in the landscape that we can say with confidence are unchanged and would be familiar to our ancestors going, and I'm not talking about going back to the Anglo-Saxon period or the Roman period, you know, the Neolithic people, the Mesolithic people would recognise this place. You know, if I could invent time travel and bring someone from here, a Romano-Briton, an Iron Age person, Bronze Age, Neolithic, whatever, if they knew this place then and I could bring them here today, they would know exactly where they are. Okay, the world around it has completely changed. It probably, during the Neolithic, was densely in the forest, but they'd recognise this, wouldn't they? Going by some of the comments that we get every week, we've got some extremely clever people watching this channel, marking my homework every week for me. It's really good, that. Perhaps you could get together with each other and invent that time machine. Now, that would be citizen science in action, wouldn't it? If we could transport somebody from the past, drop them into Trow Gill and see whether they knew where they were. OK, so you've got till next Friday to get that time machine invented. That's your deadline for your homework. Anyhow, I've got to crack on. We've got a settlement to find.
The following sequence includes scenes of antiquarian confusion that some viewers may find distressing.
Well, I'm having a devil of a time trying to find this thing. I did so much research as well, studying the satellite, etc. But unfortunately, really annoyingly actually, my Ordnance Survey map app is just freezing. It's not letting me zoom in on the satellite. I've found some possible contenders, but I'm not too sure. I doubt very much you'll be able to make this out, but I'll use an arrow or something. There's definitely an ancient wall line there. Our settlement should be sort of abutting to one of these limestone escarpments. Should we call them that? No, I'm going to call it a limestone reef because they were under the sea once, weren't they? There's one down there, and if I could get OS to work, I'd better check the contour, see if it was at 300 metres. There's definitely some signs down there, but I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. I say, ladies, can any of you help? Do you know where the Anglo-Saxon period settlement is? I'm not saying they were Anglo-Saxon people. Can you help at all? Yep, I've definitely gone too high.
That tree line down there is the tree line of Trow Gill. And in the pictures from the excavation that I've looked at, you could see that in the background. So I've definitely climbed too high. So it's down there somewhere. Is it those others that I saw? Whose idea was this? Oh, it was Paul Wood's idea. This really is when I need those armchair experts at home to shout and scream at their devices. I'm on top of one of these limestone reefs, that's the Chancellor of the Exchequer, isn't it? Limestone escarpments again. And I think looking down, this is too high. This is not the 300-metre contour. It's way too high. So I think I've got to head back down that way. If you've got any bright ideas, scream them at the devices. Bright ideas burning like fire. If you don't help me soon, I'm going to continue singing. Right, let's get down here. It's got to be this way, I think. They'll chuck me out of the institute if I fail. Right, time to get this not-so-fake new drone up. Bingo. Well, this has turned out to be one of the hardest antiquarian investigations that I've done to date. It's all turned into a bit of a farrago. I am stood on the back wall or the front wall of a rectangular building. It is very clear to me. I don't know how well it's going to come across on camera, but thick walls each side. And next to it is the clear outline of another rectangular building, slightly offset, and that's what we should see. So surveyed geophys and the likes in 2008, excavated in 2018. And it was the 2018 excavation that gave us our conclusive evidence that we have an Anglo-Saxon period building here. Charcoal dating with dates of 660 to 780. So sort of up there I've picked up what might be the stockfold wall. It's thick, about 3 feet wide, with stones down each side, rubble infill in the middle. Probably would have had a hedge on it back in the day. Inside the buildings, they found a hearth and a stone-flagged floor as well. And there's sort of interesting compartments at each end of the building, which is one of the other things that helps us with this Anglo-Saxon period dating. One of the things I particularly like about this site, out of all of those that they looked at through the sort of 2010 period, was that back in the 1930s, somewhere very near here, in one of the limestone grikes, they found a skeleton. And at the time, in the 1930s, that was assumed to be Neolithic. They didn't have any way of dating, did they then? So when they were excavating here, they took one of the bones from that skeleton and they dated that. And look at the dates that came back, 668 to 775. Remember the charcoal dating of these buildings, 660 to 780. So that person, the skeleton in the grike, may have lived here. If they didn't live here, they would have known the people who did. I'm getting more confident that I've got this right. So I'm in that building there. I'll go through the wall of that into the next rectangular building. Don't know how well that is going to show up. But then I just drop down here. So I'm at the end of the rectangular building. There might be another one there, you know. And then here we've got a really thick wall. I think that's the stockfold wall. One of the things that had confused me was that in my mind, I had the limestone on that side, but it's actually on that side. So the two buildings are sort of sheltered by the limestone reef, and they've got a nice stockfold, which is using that for one side as well. So stood at that corner of the building there, and we've got this interesting line of stones coming along here as well. So presumably this is another part of the field structure for this settlement. Yeah, it's still there as I come down in those reeds. And then it's turning here, running there, seems to go off that way a little bit. Don't know if this big hole here was anything to do with them. Probably not. Sinkhole. Just checking my antiquarian notebook there, anticipating the sort of objections I might get in the comments. Well, I guess the big one will be what's to say they're not Anglo-Norse farmstead settlements, because this area famously was settled by them. Well, they arrived in the late 8th century. The earliest they arrived is the late 8th century. So that's at the very end of the charcoal-dated period here. Remember, we've got 660 to 780. So the people who established these farmsteads were not Vikings. So way up there, again, very much sort of at the 300-metre contour level, are another set of what we now know to be Anglo-Saxon period settlements, Crummack Dale, and they were excavated by the team as well. Fortunately, given that there's a horrendous storm coming in about an hour's time, the settlements up there at the head of Crummack Dale do show up on Google Earth, so I can do that old scam for this one without having to put myself in jeopardy. The interesting thing with this site is that we go up to another level. Again, we've got charcoal dating, but at that site, there were finds. And that included, I'll refer to my antiquarian notebook again, a strikerlite, a pony snaffle bit, suggesting a degree of prosperity, smithing tongs, the tines, are they called, from a comb, an iron bell, stone sharpener, sort of whetstone, but best of all, there was the glass rim of some sort of drinking vessel or bottle, something like that. And the style of that rim is Anglo-Saxon, absolutely not Anglo-Norse. One of the very many mysteries of the British countryside for all of our overseas viewers is this. I mean, the absolute middle of nowhere here, we've got this sign, and it's peppered with sort of gun pellet sort of marks. I've never really quite understood that. Well, so the Crummack Dale settlement up there, we have dating again. Now, the earliest date there, if I get this correct, was Building 2, which was 693, so we're a little bit later. The other interesting thing about the Crummack Dale site was that they found iron ore, and that was from Millom out on the Cumbrian coast. So far from being unsophisticated, there is a distribution network going on here. Industrial raw materials are reaching this place, remote place, here in the Yorkshire Dales. Not that it was called the Yorkshire Dales then. Now, I'm reluctant to use any of the images, the content from Dr. David Johnson's presentation, because there seems to be a little note suggesting they'd prefer YouTubers not to do that. So I asked AI to create an image of an Anglo-Saxon period farmstead in the Yorkshire Dales, and this is what AI came up with. I mean, utterly ludicrous. Isn't it terrifying to think that the future education of our children, our children's children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, may end up being subject to this? When I saw that crock of AI nonsense, I thought I can do better than that. So here's my image of an Anglo-Saxon period farmstead in the Yorkshire Dales. Well, for part 3, or whatever it is, the storm has now arrived. I'm on the other side of the mountain, and it's, as you can see, action Aquarianism once again. What did you make of my artwork, by the way? Was you impressed? Because I certainly was. Well, I've made it to Brow's Pasture. Rather annoyingly, I could have driven here, but they closed the road today for the next 2 days, so that's typical. I've relaxed the format of the serious hiking playlist, and I've had to walk here anyway. It's a pretty rugged sort of landscape. I have managed to put the new, not quite so fake drone up, although the wind conditions are less than ideal, but it'll give you a flavour of it. I'm stood at the point on the map where it says ancient settlement. I'm not entirely convinced this is where the excavations took place. It gives you a sense anyway, doesn't it, of where our now confirmed Anglo-Saxon period people lived, out here on Brow's Pasture. Now, interestingly, the road down here is a Roman road. So they were living alongside a Roman road that has actually continued to this day to remain in use. I'll put the dates on the screen. I think the earliest date here is 642. So very comfortably, again, before our Norsemen arrived. And perhaps the most significant development to come from Brow's Pasture was that for the two buildings that they found here and excavated here, they applied Sir Tony Blair's grid line template to those structures. Now, that template was based on typical timber Anglo-Saxon style buildings from the Midlands, and the match was sort of spot on. The dimensions were right, and that internal structure with the little compartments was a match as well. Now, that may be a coincidence, but it appears that here in the Yorkshire Dales, in the northwest, we have two farmsteads on Brow's Pasture that can absolutely firmly be dated to the Anglo-Saxon period, and they are built in a style which we see further south in the country. And then on the opposite side of the valley, Selfer Scales. Now, that site was already scheduled prior to the excavations that took place 2016 to 2019, but it was considered to be late Iron Age or Roman period. It's not public access, by the way. These shots were taken from the adjacent open access land before any condemnation starts. Slag was found here from West Cumbria again. It was aceramic as expected, and the charcoal and bone dating 640 to 1000. That's the third week on the trot where I've ended up relying on a church as part of my video, this time for shelter. I'm inside this sort of porch thing. Do you call it a porch or is it a divinity shelter? I don't know. I won't go inside the church in case I get into bother on the old hood front. Now, you may have noticed throughout the course of this video, I have, in what has probably been quite an annoying way, kept referring to Anglo-Saxon period, emphasising that. And the reason for that is because we don't know that these people were Anglo-Saxons. We can say with a degree of confidence that they weren't Saxons, that's for sure. The Saxons never made it this far. They were kept at bay. In reality, they were probably sort of mongrel breeds of people. What do you call that? Is it polyglots, I think? A mixture of Cumbric and Brittonic Celts. There probably were some Anglians in the mix as well. This was part of the Anglian kingdom of Northumbria. And the finds seem to indicate a degree of prosperity. They had a pony, for goodness sake, and I think they found some chatelaines. Weren't they things that hung on the belts of well-to-do Anglo-Saxon ladies? I think that's right. If you look at the sort of consistency of the layout of these farmsteads on both sides of Ingleborough Mountain, it does suggest a hierarchy as well. And my best guess on that is that I suspect the church was in charge here at this period. And then I think the final interesting point is that the latest dates of habitation of any of these investigated farmsteads was at some point, I think around about 1070, something like that. So by the time you get to the end of the 11th century, all of these farmsteads have been abandoned. And I suspect that that's something to do with climate, improvements in farming, and they moved further down. They left the 300-metre contour and moved down to the villages that we live in today. Well, that's been a lot of fun this week. I'm sheltering in a lime kiln for the Sheltro, like you do. I'd like to thank Paul Wood for giving me the suggestion for this. It's been really very interesting, and obviously a huge well done to these small local archaeology groups who made these discoveries. It's astonishing, really, isn't it, that it has taken till the 21st century for any Anglo-Saxon period farmstead settlements to be located in the whole of the northwest of England. I mean, it's almost as though all the funds were diverted to another part of the country, isn't it? And just a reminder that if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It's completely free and without obligation, but YouTube will promote the channel more if it gets more subscribers. So please do that. Now, I enjoyed the outro last week where I finally got the upper hand by disgracing Richard Madeley. So I want to share this with you this week.
I received an email from disgraced TV chef Anthony Worrell Thompson asking if I'd consider him to present a future edition of our Anglo-Saxon Crosses series. I had to reply and remind him that we do the checks. Anyhow, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next week. So all I need now every week is a disgraced TV personality who's done some shoplifting. Then I can win the endings.